to just merge them if there's information there.
David Shepherd has been researching his family for 15 years. Why did you start researching your family history?
Well, it was mainly, I think, because in 1995 we were given a present by friends of ours of a computer program that was a family tree program. And we'd been talking about it from time to time, but this was the incentive, if you will, to start typing in what we knew. And then we realised how much we didn't know. So that's where we started.
Right. But she seems to be about the right years.
Oh, it doesn't happen on there anymore. I've done something to the programme.
Right. I mean, 2009 is a much better programme,
yeah.
isn't it?
When you start researching, what's the first step? The first thing you do?
Well, the first thing you do is to ask living people about what they know, but that can be very dangerous because family myths grow up and you can often find that what you're told isn't accurate. So then you start with birth certificates and marriage certificates, and you keep going back because the marriage certificate will give you the name of the parent of the bride, the parent of the bridegroom, and then you go back to birth certificates. So you work back using those two.
In practical terms, what difference has the internet made to researching family history?
Oh, it's made an absolutely massive difference. There is no comparison. In the days before the internet, it involved going to London initially to two different places, one to look at births, marriages and deaths, and the other, a completely different building, to look at census records. And then, of course, once you got back as far as you could, then it involved travelling perhaps around the country to visit a church to get parish records, which was fun, but also vastly time-consuming.
This is Kate Mosey.
It's so much simpler now.
Tell me that.
How far could most people expect to be able to trace back their families?
It's fairly easy to get back to 1837, when the birth, marriage and death registers were compiled and started. Most people can get back there. With a little bit more work involving parish registers, you can usually get back to the late 1700s, and it gets progressively more difficult after that. It's easier if you have an unusual name, and it's easier if they come from a small village as opposed to London.
I can't work out to tell you this.
You don't have to.
Not very au fait with this.
How far back have you managed to trace your family?
Well, one particular branch, thanks to the very helpful material from a lady in Oxfordshire, I've got back to 1490. But this is only because that particular branch was somewhat better off than the others, so there were wills left and records of business deals and things like that. But that's an awful lot of hard work, and this lady must have spent years and years researching it and very generously shares it with me and other people.
Was there anything in particular that you hoped to find out when you began researching?
Yes, I really didn't know anything about beyond my grandparents because it wasn't something that was ever discussed in the family. So I was curious to find out where they came from, things like that.
Have you found out anything surprising? Any skeleton in the cupboard?
Yes, indeed. In fact, it was this year. When the 1911 census was released, it was released 2 years early, I discovered that instead of just having two aunts and my father, there were another 7 children, which I had no knowledge of at all, including triplets who were 1 month old. And they were never spoken about, and there's no way of finding out what happened to them or where they went.
And how did you feel when you found this out?
I think it made me angry, to be honest, because my father had never ever mentioned anything like that. And they were a lot of kids. There were triplets, there were 2 more brothers, and it may just have been as though they hadn't lived at all, because there was no mention ever in the family about it. And frustratingly, of course, there's absolutely no way I can find out. So that's a shame.
Why is there no way you can find this out?
Well, there's no record of their birth, there's no record of their death. If they were given away, which I don't think is impossible because they were a poor family, then the surname would have changed. And there would have been no record of that. So, and there's no living relative that I can talk to. So.
So have you just given up?
You hate to give up on it, and then you rack your brains and think, is there any way I could find out? And of course, the only possibility with the Shepherd family I mentioned in the 1911 census is when the next one comes out in another 10 years, there might be some possibility of seeing if they were around somewhere then, but that's a long way away.
Did you find out anything else surprising?
I did in fact find some births that were quite close to the marriage dates, and that was a little unexpected, but my secret wish, I suppose, was to hope that Dick Shepherd, the highwayman, might have been somewhere in the family tree, but if he is, I haven't got that far back, but I wouldn't mind at all. It'd be quite exciting to have that sort of ancestor, I think.
51. I thought it was 1850, but that was the wrong one. So I'm still...
Do you think that research into family histories is addictive?
Oh yes, yes, I think any hobby can become so, but this is a fascinating hobby. Perhaps fortunately both my wife and I worked then and we're still working, so time available is dictated by work schedules. But yes, it can be. It's a fascinating hobby.